Hi, so today we're going to look at painting my Sprinter van for under £300. Okay, so this is the me from the future. I'm just going to let you know that obviously the £300 was a guesstimate at the beginning and we did overreach on that. So there's a new finished number which I will give you at the end. So if you watch to the end of this video, I will answer several questions, including sort of some little tips and tricks as to how to make the actual finish a lot better. In regards to things to use, I will add some my advice on that, or my opinion on that, I should say. Remember, I'm not claiming to be an expert on any of this. This is just something that I've done for myself. And then, of course, at the end, I will give you a show of the finished vehicle. So it's actually a long way from finished in regards to the whole thing. We've got lots to add on, so do continue to stay with us for the journey. So please like, subscribe, and share it to anybody you know that might be interested. Now, this is not a tutorial, so don't take it as such. I don't claim to be an expert, because I'm absolutely not. Years ago, I used to be a painter and decorator, but that was a lifetime ago, and that was houses, so they're completely different things. Now, I understand that a spray finish will get you a better finish, but I'm going to roller it on and I'm going to do Raptor paint, right? But first, what I want to do is just go through some of the things that we need. So obviously, preparation, as with anything, is the key to this working, right? If you don't do the prep right, it'll peel, it'll bubble, it'll come off, it won't last, and it will look terrible. So preparation is critical. So some of the things that we have for that is, obviously we've got various sort of mechanical sanders, which are really helpful. We've got all kinds of different levels of sandpaper, so different grit types. Okay, really important that we use that. I've got here a number of different small brushes, right? Metal brushes, so just to get into the crevices and the cracks. I've also got obviously drill versions of that as well, but they're just little manual ones. Okay, now if we're exposing bare metal or rust, I've got some rust remedy here. Now this obviously is really important that we don't skip this step, because whatever's going on there will only get worse, so we've got to try and nip that in the bud. So that's there. I've also got some straight to rust metal paint, so before I do any of the actual painting, I will be putting the rust remover on, I will be putting the straight to rust metal paint on, and I'll be creating a nice sturdy barrier. Okay. Now I've got some filler here, multi-purpose body filler. That's just to sort out any dinks and bangs. Now, what's great about the Raptor paint is it covers a multitude of sins. So what happens with that is that even if it's a bit, even if it's not the best looking surface, the Raptor paint will cover a lot of that. So it's really forgiving, right? So body filler. Now, with regards to that now, when we're looking at that, masks, obviously face masks, get good ones. Don't, when I say get good ones, get the best ones that you can have, right? These aren't bad. I'm in an outside space, so I'm not doing it indoors. If you're doing it indoors, it's even more important that you get proper safety equipment. So for me, these will be fine, because I'm outside, okay? Now, here, masking tape. Again, there's a lot of talk on this. Now, some people will say you need to strip everything off and take everything out and then work from the carcass of the frame. And if you're doing a proper job, then yes. You know, if you're going to that extreme, then yes. However, A, not everyone's capable of doing that, and B, not everybody wants to. So in that case, what you can do is just carefully mask around the things you don't want to get paint on and take it from there. So I think we'll probably do a mixture of both, depending on how it goes, right? So masking tape, that's one of the things we need. Basic dust brush, okay. Essentially, yes, we want to make sure all the dust is gone, everything's out of the crevices, everything is gone. It's a perfectly good working surface. So on the back of that working surface, we're going to need to clean it. Now, I do have some rubbing alcohol and stuff as well to clean, but I've also got some white spirits here. Now, the thing is with white spirits, a lot of people say don't use it, and they're probably right in their own way. However, I think as long as you allow it time to dry and evaporate and you wipe it off properly, then you should be okay. So for me, I'll be using a mixture of the both, and the rubbing alcohol is just like a final top coat. I'll just skim everything over, give it all a wipe over, just make sure it's nice and tidy. Now, when it comes to the application, and bear in mind, I've done a number of vans before, so this isn't my first time of doing this. So I'll show you a couple of pictures of previous vans. And so what I'll be using are basically what they call rad rollers, and these are cheap as anything to buy. So a pack of these is what, 10 quid for this pack. Okay? And I've also got a new roller tray. I have roller trays, but I'm going to get a new one, so I've got a couple because I'll be doing this in 2 different colours, right? Obviously some brushes. Now again, as an ex-painter and decorator, I always used to believe that the quality of the brushes was really important, which it is. However, because we're using Raptor paint and they're gonna set, we're gonna throw them away, we're not gonna use them time and time again. What we want to do is find that nice sort of bit in the middle, right? So what we've got here is a set of brushes that are 6.5 quid, and they'll be perfectly adequate for the task. I've also got a couple of old brushes lying about, which I might well use as well. Okay, now, so that takes us up to the point of where the prep is almost done. Okay, so then finally, just to be on the safe side, okay, if during that process I break something and it's too wobbly, I've got some wonderful gaffer tape. If, however, I break something and it won't move, I've got some wonderful WD-40. Either way, I can fix it. Right, now, finishing. So here, I've got some Rust-Oleum spray paint. Now with this, I'm going to be doing the wheels because I'm going to be putting some trims on. I'm not getting new wheels just yet. That is somewhere down the line, but for now I'm just going to put some trims on, but I don't want the silver shining through. So I'm going to spray paint them black. I've also got some trim wax. Okay, so this is obviously just to brighten up the trim that's already on there. There's lots of little tricks with this. I've heard with a heat gun you can do that, and various other things. I'm just going to stick with this for the time being, and hopefully that will make a difference. Now, onto the paint itself. So I'm using Raptor paint, and I'm going for 2 colours. So essentially the bulk of it is going to be NATO green, which is this bad boy here. And the rest of it then, so the panels that you can see, the white panel there, the flares that are sticking out, they're going to be brought in black. The base is going to be brought in black. And the black Raptor paint is here. So I'm hoping I've got more than enough, which I should have. So altogether, this has cost me around £300, give or take 5 quid. So it's around £300. And that, I'm hoping, is going to be enough to do everything that I need to do. As I've said, I've done this before, so I've got a rough idea of what it is that I need. So now it's just a case of hoping for the sun to come out so that I can do it. We're going to do a little walk around of the van before we get started, just to give you an idea. So she's a 2017, and she's a medium wheelbase. And we've done some modifications, so she's part built inside. We're working on that, and on the outside here, as you can see, we've added flares on both sides, which is great because that now brings the whole bed area out to 6'6", which is fantastic. Well, actually 6'8", I believe it is. And also we've added windows either side. This was just a basic working panel van when we got it. It's an ex-fleet vehicle, so it's got a few dings and bumps in it. So we've added windows, we've added flares, we've got a maxi fan at the top, and a porthole sky hole window at the back above the bed so we can look at the stars, very romantic. Rhino roof rack, and that's kind of as far as we've got. So if I just skim round, you can see there are a few little lumps and bumps. So there's quite a bit of a little bump here at the back, and it's just a bit rough in places, so it won't do it any harm to have an overhaul anyway. So from here, look again, we've got the window this side, we've got another window here in the flare, and again we've just got a basic rollout awning on the top here. Now obviously we haven't put everything on yet, we haven't put the solar on or anything like that because I wanted to paint it first. And so this gives you an idea. You can see the little exhaust there for the diesel heater, which keeps throwing up error codes, but that's a different story. So we've got some little lumps and bumps, you can see a little bit there. Okay, and so overall, it's an ex-fleet working van, which is exactly what it doesn't pretend to be anything else. So from here, that's our starting point, and that's where we're gonna go from. So how far do you go? When it comes to sanding back, how far do you go? Now again, like I said, I'm not an expert on this at all, but for me, what I've done and what I'm going to do, and hopefully it's right. Of course, let me know if it's otherwise, because again, I don't claim to know what I'm doing particularly well. So for me, what I'm looking to do is create a really good solid key without taking all of the layers of paint off. So what I want to do, I don't know whether you can see the distinction there. So essentially right across the van now, I'm going to bring it back to this. So we're going over with a pretty coarse sandpaper at the moment. I'll go over with a finer grit a little bit later on. But essentially what I'm looking to do is to get back to a really good key without taking all of the layers of paint off. Good morning, it's day 2. So yesterday was essentially prep work, today is more prep work. Remember, prep, that seems to be the order of the day. Make sure we get everything done right so that when it gets to painting, it stays put. Yeah, so more prepping today. Again, I won't show huge amounts of this, but just enough so you get the idea. So we have some body filler going in today. I know it looks very rough, but hopefully by the time we've settled it down, it'll look a lot better. So yeah, I'll come back to this a little later and we'll see what it looks like. Okay, so we've given that a bit of a sand down and we're going to get it prepped in a moment, but I just want to show you what it looks like. Now it's been sanded down, it looks a bit better. It's still a little bit rough here, so what I might do is actually go over it again and do a second coat. So we'll see whether that's needed in a bit. I've got to prime it and everything first, it's not going to stay like that. And then there's a couple of little dings just around the side here, because I had the filler out. I mean, these weren't massive, but it just helps a little bit. So the one on the door, that caught the sun quite a lot, so I'm glad that that sort of filled in. So yeah, just a couple of little dings. The main one was this one at the back here. Obviously something's caught it, but hopefully we can resolve that and it'll look a lot better with some paint on it. So here's a great example of where the old rust remedy stuff comes into play. So this rust remedy stuff is great if you just wipe it on. The idea is that it reacts with the rust. I'm not sure of the science behind it, but anyway, it's very good stuff and well worth the extra bit of time it takes to do this. So all the exposed metal work, anything that's come through like that, I'm going to give this a coat of this rust remedy now, and then I'm going to go around afterwards and prime it all up ready. So we're going to give these a coat of primer now, and I'm going to go over any of the bare metal that we have, just getting everything ready and as good as I can get it for painting, so that hopefully we're going to future-proof it against any problems with rust and things like that. Everything now is sanded down, so everything's been sanded down, everything's been cleaned up, everything's been, I've used the rust preventer and I've used the rust paint on everything now, so all of that has been sort of primed up for there. So what's going to happen now is I'm going to give the van a good wash over, make sure all the dust and all the rubbish is gone. Then I'm going to again buff it all over again. I'm going to use some white spirits and then a quick finish with some rubbing alcohol, just to make sure there's absolutely nothing in the way of foreign bodies or foreign objects that's going to interfere with the paint adhering to the frame. So hopefully that'll make life a lot easier as we go forward. Now the whole van gets a really good wash before we move on to the next thing. Now I don't want you to pay much attention to my DIY washer here. I've just literally taped a couple of sponges onto a broom to stop me having to jump up and down. I'm sure it'll be fine. morning and welcome to day 3. So today we're going to start the painting. We've got a nice day for it, so hopefully it's going to go well. We've got a good few hours to try and make a bit of a dent in it. Obviously I do have work later, but for the time being, sun shining, let's make hay. Alright, so this is the masking tape done. Now what I've done here is I've masked up the things that are important. Now I'll take off the lights, the number plate and stuff. I'll take that off as we go forward because I don't want to lose all the bits. So I'm going to take those off at kind of the last minute and I'll prep those individually. It won't take long and it won't really stop the flow because if you remember, I'm painting in sections. So this is going to be black, but I've done this anyway. I've done the outside of the window. What I would recommend is actually sheeting the windows and the mirrors, because when you're using the roller, it specks and it throws little paint drops out there. So yeah, it's a good tip recommended is to cover the windows and the mirrors. So now it's time to get on with the painting, and just want to go through some of the bits of kit that I've got. So basic roller tray, straightforward enough. Okay. 2 brushes, so I've got a bigger brush and then I've got a smaller one for the little gaps and things. Always better to have these things ready on the go because of the setting times for the Raptor paint. Okay, now I brought a bag of these rollers, and there's 2 types here. So we've got these ones which are the sort of fluffy ones, and we've got these ones which are the foam rollers. Now they both have pluses and minuses, right? So the fluffy ones, they tend to drop bits of fluff. Now as an ex-decorator, this is where I do sort of understand a little bit with things. So with this, one of the ways to help with that is before you actually use it, is to just be a bit rough with it and just give it a lot of this kind of movement here. And what happens is the loose fluff, most of it comes away, so that helps. But it will degrade really quickly with the Raptor paint, especially in the heat. The foam, what happens with the foam is it just falls apart, especially the really cheap ones. They don't take long and they just disintegrate. And then what you end up with is these, if you see these really strong plastic things here that hold the handle in, they end up creating these ridge lines in your paintwork which you don't want, right? So I'm going to try both and we're going to see which one works best. I'm just going to do a small portion. We're going to talk about how we go about painting it in a moment. So basically those are the little rollers there. And again, I've got the 2 handles. Most of this I'm going to do with the long handled roller just because it gives me better room and it gives me a little bit of distance between me and the paint. Alright, so I'm quickly going to show you how I'm going to go about this. Now, when you're glossing paintwork, so doing doors and things like that, you break things up into sections. So you've always got what they call a wet edge, right? So we're going to work on the same premise with this on the van. Now the Raptor paint, the setting times on that, it depends on the day. At the moment it's not too warm, sun's out, but it's okay. I have done this in the bright sunshine of a summer's day, and it literally went like treacle in about 10 minutes. So we should have a little bit of playing time with this. So if you don't quite get it, it's not so, it's not so bad. You can come back over it and you can get it set that way. But what I want to do is always have a wet edge. So I'm going to work in sections. So if we look to break this down and we say, right, if we look at this van here, then that's an obvious little section by itself. But if we move up to this level, then we've got these sort of inclines here where it goes in. And then of course we've got these lips and these ledges here where the flares are. So this flare is going to be a section by itself. Now that's going to be in black, this is going to be in NATO green, so that's going to be done separately anyway. So when we look at this, my sections is going to be, so I will paint using the brush on the edges here where I need to, and I will come about so far, and then I will roll that as close up to that edge of that paintwork as I can, and that way then it gives a consistent finish so you don't get these brush marks. So again, Raptor paint, when it's sprayed on, it gives you this sort of stipple effect. When it's rolled on, you also get a stipple effect, but it doesn't seem as much, right? Again, I suppose it depends on which roller that you use. So that's basically how I'm going to go about this, piece at a time. So I'm going to come to here, roll this, then I'll do this bit again, roll this, and there's a demarcation line there. So I will come to that line, and that will be a section. okay? And then I'll repeat the process here and again at the front. Now the top is pretty much one long line. There is a split in the middle, it's pretty much one long line. So again, all I'm going to do is brush in top, brush in bottom, so I'll come so far, and then I'll roll so far, then I'll brush a bit more, and I'll roll a bit more. So I'm always working on a wet edge. Hope that helps, and as we go along, you'll see what I mean a bit more. Okay, so what we've got here is our NATO Green Raptor paint. So it comes in packs of 4, and in the Raptor paint itself, in case you don't know, there's dropping everything. There's a bottle of the paint itself. There's some mixer here that goes into it. And then what you've got is a little bit of instructions here as to how to actually go about this. Now, because it's tintable, what you can do is buy the different tints and things to go into this. Now this one's already preset because I've ordered it that way, but you can get ones where you can tint it yourself. Now again, thoroughly recommend a mask on this. This stuff is very pungent, very chemically smell, and I'm absolutely sure you don't want to be breathing a lot of this in. Okay, so when we mix this, we pour this into this, and then we basically shake it for a couple of minutes, right? So we don't need to sort of pour it out and stir it. Just make sure we give it a really good shake. Worth noting on this, don't get fed up and quit too soon, right? So no matter how much you think you've shaken it, if you think you've done it enough, do more. So something that I found that was useful for me in the past doing my last van was that I didn't pour the whole bottle out in one go. So I did it in sections. So I pour out about a third, I paint that, and then I pour out another third, paint that. The reason for that is, again, because it actually starts to set in the tray if you're not careful. It will start setting in the tray, especially on a hot day. So pour out just what you need, put the lid back on it. Okay, obviously that will set inside the bottle over time, but you'll get a bit more life out of it, a bit more use out of it, and you'll be able to just extend the lifetime of this for painting. There we go. So that's the first roller tray that we're going to use. And so let's get on with it. So we're going to draw a line under this now today. I've gone about as far as I can go, and we've managed to get a fair bit of a first coat on. So as you can see there, we've left the bits that are going to be in black. So I'm just going to creep in a little bit here. So what you can see, look, is it's quite see-through. It's not, it doesn't seem to be covering all that well. However, I know that can be quite deceptive, and when it starts to dry back and when you get another coat on it, it seems to make a massive difference. So I mentioned at the start of this in regards to the rollers that I'm using rad rollers, and there are two main types. There are the fluffy type and there are the foam type. Now, the fluffy type gives off lots of bits, so I tried those and they didn't really work, so I went with the foam. Now, as I said at the start, the trouble is with the foam ones, they absolutely disintegrate really quickly. So I don't know whether you can see this, but you can see the state that this is in. It's just absolutely falling apart, right? Now, I've done literally just a couple of panels with this, so it hasn't lasted very well at all. And so I'm going through these quite quickly. So if you're going to do this, make sure you buy a bunch of these foam rollers because you're going to need them. I'm just going to show this because I talked about the different types of rollers and the foam and the cotton ones. Now the foam rollers is where we went because they're much easier to put on. However, they disintegrate really, really quickly. Now that's a known thing. I'm not saying anything new. But what I did is I went to the local superstore thing and I brought some cheap ones. Now, I don't want to get sued, so I'm not going to say too much about them other than they were basically worse than useless. They fell apart in seconds. Now, so what I did is I actually went and I brought some Hamiltons, right? So these are exactly the same thing, just far better quality. So I got these from Toolstation. They was less than £4 for a pack of 10, so it's hardly expensive, right? These last a lot better. You still need to change them periodically, and when I say periodically, I mean quite regularly, but they last a lot better. So if you've got a Toolstation near you and you're thinking of doing this, grab yourself a couple of packs of Hamilton. You won't regret it compared to the very cheap versions, which, trust me, they just make a right mess. I'm going to show a couple of little tips here that you may or may not know, or you may or may not find helpful. It's up to you, right? Now, the first one is what a lot of people find is if they're cutting in around, say, windows or angles, then they get a build-up on this overlap, right? So if I'm here and I paint like this, so what you'll see here is this overlap. Now, what can happen with that is it builds this ridge that when you roll it, it goes all sticky and it stands out. So the way to react to that is as you put it through here, then you do what they call feathering. So all I'm doing, look, is just pulling it out. So first I'm coming down one way at an angle, then I'm coming down the other way at an angle. Now what will happen when I roll that out before it dries, that'll then be a lot easier for me to manage and I won't get that ridge at the end of it. Okay, the second thing I want to quickly show you is if you get a hair or a particle or something stuck on the paintwork. So if I've painted a piece and there's a brush hair stuck on there, don't try and take it off with your finger. So what you do is you basically just get the corner of your brush and you just flick it out that way, right? And that way it'll come out a lot easier, trust me. One of the things when it comes to rollering that people often do is they find a thing called tram lines, right? That's what we call them. So if I just get some paint to load up a minute. So essentially tram lines happen when people paint like this. So what they're doing, hopefully you can clearly see that. Let me just come in a bit. There you go. So if you look here, whoop, you should be able to see the tram lines quite clearly, right? Now, the reason for that, I'm just going to try and rub those out before they start to set. Now, the reason for that is because people press too hard on one side of the roller. So what they're actually doing is they're pushing one side more than the other. So the idea is to keep the roller as straight as you possibly can, and you put an even pressure through the roller itself, throughout the length of the roller. So here, look now, if I do it this way, there's still some slight tram lines there, okay? But now it's very, very minimal, and they will dry back to almost non-existence. And obviously after a couple of coats, you shouldn't be able to see them at all. So that's the quickest way to get rid of tram lines. So we've got a first coat on of the NATO green. Now, I don't know whether you can see here, but you can see it's actually hasn't really given a great coverage. Some of the primers coming through and stuff. So this is just the first coat. I mean, I sort of was reaching the conclusion it was going to take 3. As soon as I started putting this NATO green on, it is not the same as the black. The black covers so much better. So it looks very much like I'm going to have to buy some more Raptor paint, which is going to bring us over the £300 budget that I said at the start. I'm thinking it's going to take another probably 2 bottles on top of what I already have. So normally the second coat will go on a lot easier and it will go longer, and the third coat again the same. So I'm hoping by that rationale 2 is going to be enough. So that's just going to take us over the budget by not by a huge amount, but enough, you know. Yes, so here we are. Just lastly, you can see some of the patchiness of this, but we'll have a look what it looks like on the second coat and go from there. Good morning. It's Mothering Sunday and I was trying to get a little bit of work done on the van, but when I came out this morning, everything was really wet and it was definitely not dry enough to do any of the painting. So I thought what I'd do is I'd get on with the trims instead. So today I'm looking at I'm using black trim wax. And so the idea of this is that it restores and it brings it sort of back to life. Now, you can probably see here where I've been working on this. It does actually come up okay. Now I'll show you around the van in a moment, and you can see I'll show you some before and after, because I've been working on this now for, I don't know, probably about 45 minutes to an hour. So first I want to show you what it looks like at the moment. So this is the old trim here, and when you look at that, it's been through the walls a little bit. It's a little bit stained now from all the prep work, and it could really do with bringing back to life. This now is part of what I've done here. So if we look at this now, you can see the bumpers coming up here. And if we look down the line here, now obviously I'm aware that I haven't finished the painting and everything else. That's not the problem with that. So here you can see I've done this part of the trim, and you can see a significant difference in regards to the darkness of it. Now this has been on for 45 minutes or so. I very much believe I'm going to have to do a secondary coat. I've also done the wing mirrors, as you can see here. Now again, they've actually come up really well, but again are going to need another coat. So all in all, it's a pretty cheap and effective way of brightening them up. Now, will it last? I don't know. Is it is it 100%? Well, no, it doesn't make it look brand new in that regard, but it definitely brightens it up for a few pounds and makes it look a lot nicer. So what I want to show you quickly, let me see if I can turn the camera around here. She's been watching me the entire time, right? She doesn't like it when I'm off doing things without her, so that's been my audience for today. Here we are on day 4, I think it is. I've lost track. Now obviously I'm not doing this full days every day. Obviously it's in and out the weather. Obviously it's around other things that I'm doing as well. So I think it's day 4, give or take, but it just gives you a rough guesstimate of how much time this will take. So it's been 2 days prepping and 2 days painting so far. Now, started on the black today, so we're doing the bonnets and the bottom sills and things in black. So this is the first coat of the black Raptor paint. Now that covers so much better than the green, as I think I mentioned earlier. Much easier to work with overall, strangely enough. So if you've never done this before and you're thinking of choosing a colour and you can't decide, I would have that as a factor. The black covers better. It's much easier to manage, or it seems to be easier to manage, and yeah, you get a better coverage overall. So I think if I was doing it again, I might actually go black, as I did with all of my other ones. So anyway, we're going to crack on, and yeah, we'll keep you up to date as we go along. Another tip worth noting is every day it's better to clean these out in the morning. Now what you'll normally do is you'll clean out these trays of a night time for normal painting, but with this, what I recommend that you do is you wait until the day after and everything sets. Right now you might think, oh, I can just pour new in and go over the top. Don't do that, because what will happen is it'll start to reactivate the stuff underneath, and it'll just make a right mess, and you'll waste all that very expensive paint. Right, so here's what you do. Wait for it to set. In the morning before you start again, get a little scraper and you just start picking at it, and what will happen is it will start to actually peel off. The whole thing will come away as a sheet. Okay, and then so what you've got then, look, peel all that off, and you've got a brand new tray, and you can start again. So I just want to show you this. When we talk about coverage and we're talking about the difference between the NATO green and the black, I'm just going to show you this. So this is one of the flares that I installed, and the flare is white, it's fiberglass, obviously it's been prepped. Now we saw the green earlier on, and we saw that first coat coverage looks like on that. So now look, if you watch, I'm just going to apply a section here. Now you can see what that looks like. So I'm pulling it out. It's not as if I'm really layering huge dollops on that's going to run down the side of the van. I am working that out, but you can see already that it's a significantly different coverage, and the quality is much better in regards to what it covers. So this being brilliant white, you would expect it to show through on the first coat, but what we've got here actually is a really good solid base now. So 2 coats on this will be enough. Right, that's the again, fundamentally that's one of the differences, and this is the sort of stuff you want to know before you get involved, because when you're buying the paint and you're costing that up, there's a significant difference between 2 coats and 3 coats and what that's going to look like at the end with the bill. So a question I'm getting asked quite a lot is, why am I always wearing the same thing? It's a bit like this Steve Jobs thing, yeah? So essentially, these are my club hoodies. I've got lots and lots of them, including lots of really old ones, so which is why you see me wearing the same top. This is just an old work thing, and I do wear it sort of consistently when the weather's like that, right? Same with the old Last of the Summer Wine beanie hat here. It's not the most sexy thing, it's not cool, I appreciate that, but it keeps my head warm. If you look, you know, I'm running out of hair, so it's a good idea to keep your head warm while you're working. So that's why essentially I'm wearing the same thing. I'm not, it just looks like it. And this is the finished article. So other than the black to dry, that's pretty much us finished. A little bit of touching up here and there, a little bit of wipe down, but overall that's what it looks like when it's done. I'll put some pictures up. Okay, so what did it cost and how long did it take? Well, it took roughly 5 days. Now, obviously, as I mentioned earlier, that wasn't like flat out all day, every day. That was trying to work around other things as well. But essentially, if you give yourself 4 to 5 days, then that should be enough. If you're at it full time, 4 should be enough. 5 or 6 if you need it, right? Cost-wise, now, as I mentioned, I had to do an extra coat of the NATO green that I wasn't really allowing for and budgeting at the start. So at the start, we said £300. Now, fortunately, the black did what it should, so I only needed 2 bottles for that. And also, that's cheaper than the NATO green. The NATO green for 4 boxes, for 4 bottles to a box was, I think, £160. No, £150. My apologies, just under 150. And so it took 6 bottles of the NATO green and it took 2 of the black to get to the position that we're at now. So could it do with another coat? I think, being honest with you, it probably could, and that's something that I may well do in the future and just drop another bottle onto it. So what we're looking at, £149 originally for the 4 bottles, and then it was another, I think it was 80 quid give or take for another 2 bottles. Obviously you're paying a little bit more of a premium, and then 2 bottles of the black, which was cheaper. I think that was probably 65 to 70 quid. The back to black stuff I already had, but a bottle of that is a few pounds, 4 or 5 quid. Obviously then you've got rollers and brushes, again a few pounds at best. So I spent, I think, probably £6 or £7 on brushes and rollers. Maybe call it a tenner just to be on the safe side. So if we add all that up and we bring it roughly to a figure, now the figure that we started with was £300. I think actually 4 is a more reasonable number. I think we're just under the £400 mark, but as I said, that is on the understanding that I could probably do with at least 1 more bottle of the NATO green just to skim over the top and just to finish it off properly. But I think it's good enough for what it is, and all in all, 400 quid for a completely revamped van, for it to look so different, for a couple of days work. I think that's a job well done. Let me know what you think.